Making it to the NBA is synonymous with being a great basketball player. But let's be honest, the NBA is a whole different beast. Most of its stars and legends arrived with a golden reputation, already celebrated as prodigies before they even stepped foot on the court. However, there are players who were judged too quickly, written off as nobodies, only to end up shoving those doubts down everyone's throat. Some players fall into the underrated category for a variety of reasons. The boos that echoed on draft night, criticism of their skills or physique, or simply because someone decided they'd never make it to the big leagues. Oh, how sweet it must feel to prove them all wrong. Today, I'll introduce you to the most underestimated players in NBA history, those who turned a doubt into motivation and left a trail of shattered expectations behind them. Tyrone Muggsy Bogues is a man who defied all odds to become one of the most inspiring figures in basketball history. Muggsy wasn't just underestimated in the NBA. His fight to be taken seriously started in his childhood. Standing at just 5 feet 3 inches, 1.60 meters, he holds the title of being the shortest player in NBA history. With a mother standing at 4 feet 11 inches, 1.5 meters, and a father at 5 feet 5 inches, 1.65 meters, it seemed like the odds were stacked against him when it came to a career in professional basketball. Growing up in one of Baltimore's toughest neighborhoods, Muggsy faced challenges far greater than his height. As a child, he narrowly escaped death after being hit by a stray shotgun blast. For many, such a traumatic event would have been a reason to quit, but not for Muggsy. That moment became a turning point, fueling his determination to make every moment count. Life, however, had more challenges in store. His father was sentenced to 20 years in prison, a devastating emotional blow. Yet Muggsy kept moving forward, dedicating himself to basketball even when he was always the last player chosen for teams because of his height. Over time, Muggsy began to silence his critics. He went from being the last pick on the court to becoming the best player in his neighborhood. Those who once ignored him were soon fighting to have him on their teams. In 1987, his hard work and resilience paid off when he was selected as the 12th pick in the first round of the NBA draft. He joined a legendary draft class that included stars like David Robinson, Scottie Pippen, and Reggie Miller. Despite every challenge and doubt thrown his way, Muggsy Bogues earned his spot in the NBA and created a legacy that continues to inspire. His story proves that no matter how tall the odds or how small the chances, determination and heart can break through any barrier. John Stockton, one of the greatest point guards in NBA history, had a journey to stardom that few could have predicted. Although he ended up as an icon of the game, his beginnings were filled with doubt and harsh criticism, some of which came from his own team's fans. Standing at 6 feet 1 inch, 1.85 meters, Stockton was considered too short to excel in a league dominated by taller, more athletic players. But height wasn't the only reason he was dismissed by many. Stockton wasn't black, and during an era when African-American players overwhelmingly dominated the NBA, many fans simply didn't believe someone like him could succeed at the highest level. It was, quite frankly, a reflection of the times. Stockton was selected with the 16th pick of the 1984 NBA draft, a draft class that included legends like Michael Jordan, Hakeem Olajuwon, and Charles Barkley. While those players came into the league with hype and star power, Stockton arrived without much fanfare. He wasn't a college sensation, and his playing style lacked the flash that captured headlines. When the Utah Jazz announced Stockton as their pick, their fans reacted with boos.
Select John Stockton of Gonzaga University.
To many, Stockton didn't look like an NBA player. He was smaller than most, unassuming in appearance, and, in their eyes, didn't belong in a league where explosiveness and physical dominance reigned supreme. But Stockton didn't let the hate define him. In his rookie year, he asked for VHS tapes of the Jazz's previous season, showing his dedication to understanding his teammates and improving his game. His first 3 seasons were solid but unspectacular. He averaged 7 points and 7 assists per game. Respectable numbers, but far from enough to silence his critics. The doubts persisted, and some fans even questioned if the Jazz had made a mistake drafting him. That all changed in his 4th season. In 1987, Stockton earned the starting point guard position and made his mark on the league. He led the NBA in assists with an incredible 13.8 per game, proving not only that he belonged, but that he could dominate. From 1988 to 1996, Stockton led the league in assists for 9 consecutive seasons, cementing his status as the greatest playmaker of his era. If Michael Jordan was the king of scoring, Stockton was the undisputed ruler of assists. His precise passing and ability to orchestrate an offense redefined the role of a point guard. Stockton's success went beyond statistics. Despite being labeled as weak or not physical enough, he was fearless on the court. He didn't hesitate to go head-to-head with bigger, stronger opponents, earning their respect through his grit and tenacity. In 1997 and 1998, Stockton, alongside his legendary teammate Karl Malone, led the Utah Jazz to the NBA Finals. Although they fell short both times against Michael Jordan's Chicago Bulls, Stockton had already cemented his legacy. Today, John Stockton is remembered as one of the greatest players in NBA history. He overcame stereotypes, prejudice, and relentless doubt to become a legend. Kawhi Leonard is one of those players who wasn't just underestimated at the start of his career. He silenced every critic in the most definitive way possible, by winning championships and redefining what it means to be a complete NBA player. Leonard was selected in the 2011 NBA draft by the Indiana Pacers as the 15th pick, but he was immediately traded to the San Antonio Spurs. This trade raised eyebrows among Spurs fans. Why? Because the team gave up George Hill, who was considered their second-best point guard after Tony Parker. To many, Kawhi seemed like an unnecessary addition, a sixth man at best, when they already had a legend like Manu Ginobili excelling in that role. On top of that, Kawhi didn't have the same media hype as other players in the 2011 draft, such as Kyrie Irving, the #1 pick, or Enes Kanter, the 3rd pick. Ironically, Kanter would go on to make more headlines for his WWE appearances than for anything notable in the NBA. Unlike these players, Kawhi entered the league quietly, and while he wasn't booed like John Stockton, many Spurs fans weren't thrilled with his arrival and doubted his potential. But Kawhi Leonard had something that his critics couldn't see: an unrelenting work ethic. Even as a rookie, Greg Popovich, the Spurs' legendary coach, gave him significant minutes on the court, which was rare in San Antonio's system. Fans weren't convinced, but Leonard used every opportunity to prove his worth. Over time, he became a key player on both ends of the court, showing a rare balance between offensive and defensive skills. While he wasn't initially very efficient offensively, he worked tirelessly to improve. Leonard's defining moment came in 2014 during the NBA Finals against LeBron James and the Miami Heat. Kawhi was the key defensive piece tasked with containing LeBron, and he succeeded in limiting the superstar's impact. His defensive brilliance, combined with his offensive contributions, earned him the title of Finals MVP. Kawhi wasn't just a role player, he became a cornerstone in the Spurs championship win, helping the team secure their first title in 7 years. Those who once doubted him were forced to acknowledge his greatness. In 2015, Leonard was named Defensive Player of the Year, and from then on he continued to rack up accolades. He went from being criticized as a bad trade to becoming one of the Spurs' most vital players. Ben Wallace is a prime example of perseverance and determination in the face of adversity. His path to the NBA wasn't just difficult, it was almost impossible. Despite averaging an impressive 13.4 points and 10 rebounds per game in college, Wallace wasn't drafted in the 1996 NBA draft. The league didn't believe in him, and he was overlooked entirely. But Wallace didn't let that stop him. The Washington Bullets, now the Wizards, signed him as an undrafted player for a modest 3-year contract. But even then, his journey was far from smooth. During his time with the Bullets, Wallace's performance didn't exactly silence the doubters. He averaged only 3.5 points, 5.2 rebounds, and 1.2 blocks per game over 3 seasons, numbers that didn't scream future NBA star. In 1999, he was traded to the Orlando Magic, where he continued to fly under the radar. Critics labeled him as just another player who would fade away after a few uneventful seasons. For many, Wallace was destined to become a footnote in NBA history, a player who came and went without making an impact. But Wallace had other plans. In the year 2000, he was traded to the Detroit Pistons, and everything changed. The Pistons saw something in Wallace that other teams had overlooked: his raw defensive talent and relentless work ethic. That year, he finished 5th in Defensive Player of the Year voting, signaling the beginning of his transformation into a defensive powerhouse. By 2002, Wallace's defensive prime had fully emerged. He won his first Defensive Player of the Year award, the first of 4 he would earn throughout his career. That same year, he was selected to the NBA All-Star Game, making history as the first undrafted player to ever be named an All-Star. Wallace became a nightmare for opponents in the paint, with his intimidating physique and unmatched defensive instincts. His ability to block shots, grab rebounds, and anchor the Pistons' defense made him one of the most feared players in the league. By 2004, Wallace achieved what many thought was impossible. He helped lead the Pistons to an NBA championship, defeating the heavily favored Los Angeles Lakers in the finals. Wallace's defensive dominance was crucial in neutralizing Shaquille O'Neal, one of the most dominant centers in NBA history. This victory solidified Wallace's legacy as one of the greatest defensive players the league has ever seen. There's a reason why Giannis Antetokounmpo is called the Greek Freak. His journey from the streets of Athens to NBA superstardom is one of the most inspiring stories in basketball history. Born to Nigerian immigrants in Greece, Giannis grew up in extreme poverty. His family struggled to make ends meet, and as a child, he and his brothers sold trinkets on the streets just to put food on the table. Basketball wasn't even his first love. His dream was to play soccer. But by the time he turned 13, Giannis decided to dedicate himself to basketball, not because he loved it, but because he saw it as a way to help his family escape their dire circumstances. Giannis wasn't a natural-born talent. In his early days, he was clumsy, inconsistent, and lacked basic shooting skills. Coaches saw potential in his tall, lanky frame, but his performance on the court was far from impressive. Still, Giannis possessed something far more important: an unparalleled work ethic. He trained tirelessly, often staying at the gym until midnight, sometimes even sleeping there to maximize his practice time. Slowly, his hard work began to pay off. In 2013, Giannis declared for the NBA draft. He was an unknown prospect. Scouts described him as raw and unpolished, someone who would take years to develop. 14 teams passed on him before the Milwaukee Bucks took a chance, selecting him with the 15th pick. At the time, few believed in him. He was seen as a risky pick, an unproven talent from overseas. Critics doubted whether his skills would ever translate to the NBA, and many assumed he would fade into obscurity. Giannis's rookie season didn't silence the doubters. He averaged just 6.8 points and 4.4 rebounds per game, numbers that did little to stand out. But what no one realized was that Giannis was quietly transforming. Each year he got better, physically, mentally, and skill-wise. While the basketball world focused on stars like LeBron James and Stephen Curry, Giannis worked in the shadows, steadily becoming a force to be reckoned with. By 2019, the NBA could no longer ignore him. Giannis won his first MVP award, becoming the first Milwaukee Bucks player to do so since Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. He followed that up with another MVP in 2020, solidifying his status as one of the league's elite. But his crowning moment came in 2021, when he led the Bucks to their first NBA championship in 50 years. In the finals, Giannis delivered a legendary performance, including a 50-point game in the series-clinching win, earning him the Finals MVP award. I know what you're thinking. Stephen Curry was born with a silver spoon in his mouth. His father, Del Curry, was an NBA player. So of course, Steph had all the advantages: access to gyms, coaches, and resources. It must have been easy for him to make it to the NBA, right? Well, let me stop you right there. That couldn't be further from the truth. Curry's journey to greatness was filled with doubt, criticism, and a constant fight to prove himself at every level. Sure, Steph grew up around basketball, often seen practicing with his dad or shooting hoops as a kid, but his small frame and wiry build were constant targets for doubters. Standing at just 6 feet 2 inches, 1.88 meters, Curry was considered too small to succeed in elite basketball. Scouts and recruiters didn't see him as a future star. They saw him as a kid with a nice jump shot but little else. Even in high school, where he was the best player on his team, most college programs weren't interested. He wasn't strong enough, athletic enough, or physically imposing enough for their taste. Only Davidson College, a small school with little basketball prestige, gave Curry a chance, and boy did he make the most of it. At Davidson, Curry became a star, lighting up scoreboards and taking his team to the NCAA tournament, where he made headlines with his electrifying performances. Even LeBron James showed up to watch him play, captivated by the way this skinny kid could dominate games with his shooting. But despite his college success, the critics still weren't convinced. They saw him as a good college player who would struggle in the NBA. When Curry declared for the 2009 NBA draft, the doubts only grew louder. Scouts said he wasn't athletic enough, he couldn't defend, and his slender frame wouldn't hold up against the physicality of the NBA. He was labeled as a one-dimensional shooter, someone who might be a decent role player, but nothing more. When the Golden State Warriors selected him with the 7th overall pick, many questioned their decision, especially since Ricky Rubio and Johnny Flynn, both point guards, were picked ahead of him. Critics thought the Warriors had wasted their pick on a player who would never live up to the hype. Curry's early NBA years didn't silence the doubters. His first few seasons were plagued by ankle injuries, and many wondered if his body could handle the rigors of the league. But instead of giving up, Curry doubled down. He worked tirelessly to strengthen his body and refine his game. By 2015, the league had no choice but to take notice. Curry led the Golden State Warriors to their first NBA championship in 40 years and won his first MVP award. His incredible shooting range, dazzling handles, and quick release weren't just unique, they were revolutionary. In 2016, Curry became the first player in NBA history to win a unanimous MVP award. That same year, the Warriors broke the record for the most wins in a single season, finishing with 73 victories, surpassing the legendary 1996 Chicago Bulls, led by Michael Jordan. Curry's ability to shoot from absurd distances didn't just change the way defenses had to play, it changed the way the game was played altogether. He sparked a three-point revolution that has reshaped basketball at every level. Today, Stephen Curry is widely regarded as the greatest shooter in NBA history. With 4 NBA championships, 2 MVP awards, and countless records to his name, Curry has more than silenced his critics. But more importantly, he's inspired an entire generation of players to believe that skill, heart, and determination matter more than size and strength. Let me guess. You're wondering who could possibly top this list. After all, we've already talked about players who overcame incredible odds to make their mark in the NBA. But the player at number 1, his story stands out because, unlike the others, he wasn't known for anything. He wasn't a college superstar, didn't have jaw-dropping athleticism, and certainly wasn't hyped on draft night. In fact, the NBA showed him so little respect that his selection wasn't even announced live. It was shown during a commercial break. That player, Nikola Jokic. Born and raised in Sombor, Serbia, Jokic's childhood was far from glamorous. He wasn't the kid with posters of basketball legends on his wall, dreaming of one day playing in the NBA. Instead, Jokic spent his youth riding horses and growing up in a modest household. By the time he turned 13, he started playing basketball. But even then, he wasn't exactly lighting up the court. At 17, he turned professional in Serbia, but his career wasn't gaining much attention. Scouts didn't see anything particularly special about him. Worse yet, he was overweight and had a poor diet, famously drinking 3 liters of Coca-Cola every day. To put it bluntly, no one believed this kid had a future in basketball. In 2014, Jokic declared for the NBA draft. To say expectations were low would be an understatement. He was selected by the Denver Nuggets with the 41st overall pick, a second-round selection that most people assumed would fade into obscurity. To make matters worse, his selection wasn't even broadcast live. Instead, it happened during a State Farm commercial, a moment that perfectly captured just how little attention the league was paying to him. Even after being drafted, Jokic stayed in Serbia for another year, playing professionally but without much fanfare. He was still seen as a long shot, someone who might never even step onto an NBA court. When Jokic finally joined the Nuggets in 2015, no one expected much. He was a backup center in his first season, averaging modest numbers. 10 points, 7 rebounds, and 2.4 assists per game. He was just another player, another body on the roster. But quietly, Jokic was working on his game. What people didn't realize was that Jokic had something truly unique, an almost magical court vision. He wasn't just a big man who could rebound. He could pass like Magic Johnson and orchestrate an offense like a point guard. By 2019, the NBA started to take notice. That year, he finished 9th in MVP voting, but it wasn't until 2021 that the world saw what he was truly capable of. In 2021, Nikola Jokic became the first center since Shaquille O'Neal to win the NBA MVP award. The kid who was once mocked for being too slow, too soft, and too unathletic was now the best player in the league. But he didn't stop there. In 2023, Jokic led the Denver Nuggets to their first ever NBA championship, earning the Finals MVP award in the process. That season, he silenced every doubter, proving that he wasn't just good, he was transcendent. Along the way, he broke countless records, including becoming one of the top players in triple-doubles, surpassing many legends of the game. As of today, Jokic has won 2 MVP awards, an NBA championship, and a Finals MVP award, and his career is far from over. He went from being a player no one wanted to one of the most unique and dominant forces in NBA history. Jokic's story isn't just about proving people wrong, it's about redefining what it means to be great. He's shown the world that you don't need flashy athleticism or media hype to become a legend. All you need is skill, intelligence, and the determination to let your game do the talking. All right, that's it for today. If you love basketball and want more stories like this, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to ring the bell so you never miss a video. Thanks for watching, keep ballin', stay dreaming, and I'll see you in the next one.